All right, this is the Dev Book Club. We are talking about implementing domain-driven design by Vaughn Vernon. Tonight we're going to be covering Chapter 8, which is domain events. I'm joined by Eric and Bo, who is not at his computer right now, so that's cool. Anyone have any, well, I guess Eric, do you have any initial thoughts about the chapter? Like anything strike you as interesting about the whole chapter?
Interesting, not much. It was a tough chapter.
Yeah, I agree with that. We were kind of talking about this before we started the broadcast, and I think this is one of the chapters that, I mean, it's a promising subject, and it's like it's a very broad subject, I think, but the chapter to me just kind of droned on and on and on for a long time, and it was difficult to for me to really get much out of it because I felt like I was constantly being like, oh, I just wish this would end, so I had to read it in several different chunks to even glean anything out of it. But I think, domain events, personally, I think they're really cool. I think the concept is something I looked for a long time in my implementation of things. I was doing it through exceptions or, log events or just all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's like, oh, now you think about it, that totally makes sense to have something that happens and say this was created and then let something else that cares about it subscribe to that and then send an email notification, as opposed to figuring out how that all fits into my models. How do I get email sending ability internally? And then domain events is kind of the answer that makes sense to me. So, but I already knew that prior to reading the chapter, so it was kind of, I don't know. I think I was just looking for a lot more out of what he had to say.
Yeah, seems like a long chapter for not much.
I think that's a good summary. All right, we're good. We're done. We're done then. No, so yeah, just kidding. That would be the most epic book club in the world. You say one thing and leave. Yeah, I'm trying to. It's been a while since I actually read through this, so I'm trying to just look and see if anything popped out to me immediately as something interesting. But yeah, I'm really having a difficult time. I think a lot of the time in this chapter was spent on, or to me, it felt like it was spent on very specific to Java implementation of things, how you would do it in the Java world. I guess that's what it felt like to me. Was very heavily, here's the tools that we have, here's message queues that I would use in a Java program, and so on and so forth. And I don't know, to me, it didn't seem like a really useful explanation.
Yeah, a lot of publish, subscribe in Java, and yeah, pretty much it. Then message queue later.
Yeah, Bo, if you have anything to say, you can pop it into the chat room if you can't actually talk, and I'll be happy to talk about it. As far as what domain events are, I felt, I don't know, did you get a grasp of any what domain events are based on this chapter? Eric, what did you take away as why you should use them in your domain?
I am truly not sure. Pretty much, I don't know, like you say, you just publish something to a queue and you let other people cares about it. You don't have to worry about how they're gonna react to it, what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah, I think that was that's kind of the cool thing about events to me is you're kind of taking something that a domain expert says, when this happens, this should happen. Or when this happens, there should be an email sent. You're taking an actual concrete example or something that is supposed to happen in the real world, and then modeling it in a way that actually embodies that whole idea of this is an event that happened, as opposed to this, I don't know, this concept of the serialized or the serial implementation of things. I think of it a little differently as, you're sitting there waiting for something to happen before you act. So it's not as, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say, but it seems not as coupled to the procedural lifestyle or the procedural style of working. It's this idea of, okay, I only care about this one thing, and then I tell you that something happened, and then any number of listeners can take some other action based on it or not. Like, I don't really care. All I care about inside this one module is that I perform what I'm supposed to do. So it's kind of like the embodiment of like the single responsibility business, or a single responsibility principle. Okay, so Bo says one thing that he liked is that you don't have to think about domain events in general as being in a queue. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. This is yeah. No, I think I think that's also another interesting thing. Like I think he talked about event sourcing a little bit in this chapter, and that whole concept I have never actually tried. Like the whole idea of I think he also talked about the idea of stacking up events and then replaying them on top of things. Like I've never actually attempted to do that. Like I've always just kind of done it a different way. Like I've never really embraced the style, but I think it's something interesting to me. Like I think I would be stoked to see like a real example of it, but of course it's not in the book, so go figure.
I think you think about the event too as a way to revert them back, cancel stuff, and play them back and forth.
Yeah, which I think is also pretty cool.
But
like
yeah, But he already talked about that when he talked about event sourcing.
True, that's true.
To me, it's the same thing, just pushed a little bit further.
Let's see, what else? Because I should have written stuff down. That would have been helpful. Another thing that I found, like when he talked about the whole idea of using events to using events to span across bounded contexts, I thought that was kind of interesting. Just it wasn't something that I'd really thought about, like the idea of having like this bounded context is like remote or whatever, like having, and then how do you actually communicate with it? And so it's like this whole idea of going from like sending or for me it's like, well, you've got this remote resource, so it's obviously going to be, you know, a REST service or something like that. So that's how you talk to it in real time, whatever. But you don't necessarily have to. Like you can easily send something through a queue if you want to, and let it get there into a remote bounded context where all it cares about is it's listening for like the certain event that happened, and then some other weird action happens, like updating. I think we talked about this earlier, but like how would you have like a context that's dealing with user accounts, and then inside of one context they're like a manager or something, and then you say this moderator was removed, but that's actually like that permission level is stored somewhere else or whatever. Like how would you get that information back to your identity access management module? And I think this is a way to do it. Like, right, you just have an event that says this particular user was, or this user was no longer given moderator access in this submodule or subcontext. So bubble that information up, and then your identity access module is able to deal with it. Bo is pointing out to practical event sourcing by, you know, I cannot pronounce his name. Like it's Matthias? I don't even know. Like I have no idea how to pronounce it. It's verraes.net. He's got an article from March of this year on practical event sourcing, or maybe it's an example. Let's see.
It's slides.
Oh, it's presentation. Okay, yeah, cool. So presentation on practical event sourcing. So if you're into or interested in that, definitely check that out. And it's in PHP even, so us crazy non-Java leaning people that are reading this book can digest it. Sorry, just flipping through.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing here. There's a lot of latency tolerant, eventually consistent stuff. There's a lot of on this, as you don't need to have everything to be consistent right away. You can have a latency of a few seconds, sometimes even minutes.
Yeah, so eventual consistency. Yeah, that's definitely a cool thing too if you can deal with it. But I mean, sometimes I don't know. That's like the big argument against using things like MongoDB or something because it's problematic in some cases. I don't know. Like it's I really wish that there was like a case made in this chapter for one approach. Like I really wish that there was just here's like start to finish why you would use it or how you would use domain events in like a intelligent way, because I felt like it was just kind of, I don't know, scattered. So it's why I didn't really take much away from this particular chapter, because it was so scattered in like what it was trying to convey. Okay, so Bo is saying the one thing that really stood out for him was about how to send messages between aggregates and then bounded context. Like that's like what to think about. Like if you're thinking about solving the problem of you've got like two aggregates or whatever, and you need to send some message between them, that domain events is kind of the best way to get that message across. And I think I would take that away too. Like that's, I don't know, like that's, to me, like that's the whole point of the idea of domain events. So this chapter could have been about 4 pages, in my opinion. Yeah, like, so I'm just looking at the summary, just for like the wrap-up section, just to kind of get a broad overview, and it's really, honestly, it's just talking about the idea of, how components publish events, which ones subscribe to them, why you'd want to have an event store, how you can do it in Java, how one's used in Java. So yeah, I feel like it's not a whole lot of meat to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so you don't do much with, this is Bo again, he doesn't do much with transactions, and often wondered how you deal with transactions with events. Okay, he's talking about transaction level stuff at the application level. I must have blanked on that particular section.
Yeah, same
Do
here.
you know what he's
I'm only
talking about?
remembering it. Nope, no idea.
Bo, did you read the same chapter we did? I think you may have. May have read something we didn't read. Maybe I passed out. No, it's entirely possible. No, I think, I don't know, like, I really, is there anything that you didn't understand about domain events from this chapter, or like did everything, to me, like, everything was pretty straightforward. I don't know, like, it wasn't anything that taught me something, so I don't know what really to talk about. Nothing?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree it was pretty simple.
Yeah, I really, there wasn't anything mind-blowing, so I don't know, like, what, I really wish I had something to talk about here. It's going to be the worst book club we've ever done, guys. Yeah, we waited months for this particular
I think that's
chapter
why
to
it
be
was
done.
so hard to have people.
Probably. Like, I think this is probably why no one, or everyone was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that, because this chapter was impossible to read. Yeah, really, I really thumbed through this thing like 3 times, and there's nothing that I highlighted or anything in here, so maybe I didn't actually read it. That's possible too. Is it really that big of a lag? I'm telling jokes and you get like a laugh 2 minutes later. It's crazy. I don't know. Really, honestly, I got nothing else. Does anybody else? Do you have any?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to find what Bo's talking about, but transaction stuff. I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, do you happen to know like a general section for that book? Because that would be kind of. I'd be interested to see if I missed that somewhere, or if you just read on to another. I think you read on to another chapter. He got confused. Yeah, I also didn't. I mean, the little sassovation example that he's been going through. I don't know that I really took anything out of that for this particular chapter either. Like, I mean, generally, I think it's useful through the book just for him to kind of clarify, even if it's kind of a cheesy example of like how this would be applied in real life. But I don't feel like that really wormed its way into this chapter either, to really spread or shed some light on like how you would do it or like how it makes sense in a semi-real situation.
Yeah, I think the saturation, usually they're just pretty much saying, hey, these guy did it, they were successful with it, and
Or semi-successful. They make a lot of really rookie mistakes, in my opinion.
yeah,
Almost like they're a made-up company.
yeah, almost.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like the biggest thing that I wanted to really be fired up about in this chapter was the event store stuff. Like, just like I said, like I've never worked with that, so I thought it would be really mind blowing of how they would use that in like a real application or whatever. But then the examples that were, I think that was the Sassovation stuff. Was he was going through like the code that they would have used to create an event store and like how it would work inside the concept of like backlogs and everything. And I don't know, like I felt like it was not as cool as I thought it would be. Like really not as useful. Like I think it's just kind of
Yeah,
a
maybe
basic cue,
just
right? Like,
it'd be interesting to give it a try in a real application. But yeah, that chapter was not really exciting.
yeah, yeah, I wish it would be cool. I think he also talked a little bit, if I remember correctly, about like using domain events like as a way to hook into like a legacy system or to integrate with a legacy system. Like you have your basically you're designing like middleware to work as like the mechanism for communicating back into some legacy component or legacy context or whatever, or even I guess if you had the luxury of working on a team with multiple teams where like one was practicing DDD and one wasn't, you could still have the same. You could still use the same technique for having like an anti-corruption layer sitting between you and like the middleware of your like messaging, like actual get to them. So like that's how you use. Like I think that'd be an interesting use case for domain events.
I don't remember that, but it's been a long time. But I agree with you. It could be interesting to try it like that. To actually decouple the teams.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Like I think that would be like a useful way to like I guess segregate yourself from problems. Is like you've got something that's going on, so you're just exposing events like how the legacy code or how the other application deals with it. You don't really care. You're just saying you told me to do something or you asked me for something, and then here's what happened. So you deal with that how you want to. All right, here we go. So Bo has found the section he was talking about. There's a call out that talks about remember that the application controller or the application service controls the transactions. Don't use the event notification to modify a second aggregate instance. That breaks the rule of thumb to modify one aggregate instance per transaction. Then there's a whole another paragraph that talks about one thing that the scriber should not do is get another aggregate instance and execute modifying command behavior on it. Oh, okay, yeah. Do you know what page that's on, by chance? Oh, come on, you're killing me with this.
Reading on a Kindle.
Oh, man. Okay, so that's usually the pages that it feels like, 6,906. That's how many pages this chapter was. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, that that you're like, you shouldn't. I'm guessing what he's saying, or I guess what that's trying to say is that you let like your application is what's actually controlling, like orchestrating the work that's being done. So like, don't use internally, like don't use another aggregate. Like you just kind of send the event out and let it filter through the application service, or the application layer, I guess, to deal with that transaction. Is that kind of what you took from it? Also, the consistency of all aggregate instances other than the one used in the single transaction must be enforced by asynchronous means. Oh, is that? I don't know. I don't know where that is. That could be in any number of these 50 pages. But yeah, I think that's an interesting concept. Yeah, so transactions are an interesting beast. Like I've only used them a few times, just for situations where I had like a lot of processing to do, and I knew it was going to take time to chew through, and so I didn't want to end up in like an inconsistent state. So I've never really, like, I generally don't need to use them because nothing I'm working on is that sensitive. Like, the classic example is bank accounts and that type of stuff. Like, I'm not doing stuff that really benefits from that necessarily. One situation at work where we kind of rely on them heavily is we've got these large sheets of information that need to be processed and turned into available inventory you would sell. So we've got like a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of different things that could go wrong with the data that you may not necessarily know until you're trying to actually put it into a model. So we've got like the whole thing wrapped into sets of transactions that take it and parse it into individual pieces, send it off to its respective models, like its respective layers. Something happens. If that fails, well, events get triggered, I guess you could say, that come back and tell it, hey, that particular section failed, so then we just roll back the whole thing. So that's like the only valid case that I've ever really used transactions for. So it's generally, yeah, I'm kind of the same way of, I don't really think about them that much, because it's like the only time I would think about it is when I have a long running or something that really needs data consistency and I can't figure it out ahead of time. That's the only time I would think to use it, and by then I've already gone down the path. So like I wouldn't personally start using or try to, I guess, force domain events for, or like in place of that type of stuff. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. At work, we're dealing with money, so we use transactions a lot. But I'm not sure where events will fit into that.
Well, I think it's talking about like the idea of having like transactions that cross aggregates, right? I think that's the idea. So like events just tell you like something, like they just tell you, they're basically the trigger that would tell you to do something like in another event. So you're passing that all through the application service, like application service level, as opposed to working like directly, like you're in this aggregate, something happens, which would cause like another aggregate to need to do something with another aggregate, but instead of dealing with that there, you send it back through and let like the application handle the whole orchestration of that transaction. I think that's what this is saying, although I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and read that.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
I mean, I guess I could try to understand it. I mean, this is again, like, I think we've said this, or I think I've probably said this before a lot, but for a book that's called Implementing Domain-Driven Design, I like really, really want an implementation, right? Like, I really want some way to just like to prove to me that events, like in this case, that events like help with the idea of transactions between contexts or between aggregates. Like, show me the code that proves that, or whatever. That, like, just even a basic example. Just like show me something that I can see, as opposed to just telling me and hoping that I believe it. And of course, I didn't even see it in the chapters, so I'm really just believing Bo that I should believe Vaughn Vernon about this concept. So. All right, I think that really is all I have to say about this chapter. Any parting words? Okay, Bo says we have to be fair to the author, that there is some implementation. There's just like tiny little bits broken across sections. So yeah, I agree with that. There is actual code in the book. I'm not saying there isn't. Just like, to me, I don't know, like I really wish that Sassivation example was like a full-fledged here's an implementation, right? Like, I wish that existed as an example in the entire book and went from start to finish or whatever, so that you could see all of this stuff at work.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. That's my
you could build the application from beginning to the end.
Yeah, or just even if it wasn't
It would
like
be fun.
even if it wasn't written that way, I'd be cool with just a like here's a download of the Sassivation code or something like that, and then use that code in the book so that I can reference, oh, he's talking about domain events, go look at the example, go look at the code and say, oh, there's where he used them internally, or there's where he used them in the application. Like, that's what I want. That's the book I think you should write, Bo. Bo doesn't have anything else to do. He's not busy at all, so he's going to write some books. Yeah, cool. All right, any parting words, Eric?
No.
No
I think
parting
the
words.
next chapter is next chapter is a lot more.
Yeah, you already read the next chapter, didn't you? So we're going to go over chapter 9, which is like 5 pages, it feels like. Cool.
Yeah.
So we'll do that in 2 weeks. I mean, 4 months or whatever. See if we can get that one done. Hopefully I'll be out of I need some code mood by then, so. And apparently the lag is getting really bad. I should probably figure out if that's me or just my connection. I don't know, so. All right, excellent. Thanks, guys. That is all we have for tonight. We will be back, I guess, in 2 weeks for Chapter 9, where we can talk about modules.